heard this. Someone's sound is bouncing back anyway. And can I see chat? There's chat. Boom, boom, boom. Is this connected up? Oh, Mihail's ran away anyway.
1 second. Come on.
Take your time.
Okay. Oof. I'm wrecked. I'm up in Dublin visiting my mother in hospital, and I couldn't get a taxi back from the hospital, so I had to walk about 5 kilometers.
Yeah. Did you just run here today?
Walking, carrying my computer and stuff on my back. So,
Jesus,
and then I
wild.
wolfed down some food. So I may just pass out.
Jesus. What was it called? Where am I? Well, I'm live anyway. That's the main thing. Just 1 second. Turn everything on. Live. Well, I gotta make sure I'm being paid anyway, so we'll turn that on.
Oh Jesus, yeah.
And
better do that too. Hold on, I'd forgotten to do that.
Sometimes, what was it called? So cranky.
Just let me set up the channel.
Oh yeah, take your time. Irish clans, and then where's the other bloody one? Yes, no, and where am I going? Oh yeah, there we go. Click on this one. Loading, save. There we go. Is my thing even triggered? There we go.
Okay, none of this is. Oh, okay.
Well, Mihal is live anyway. Irish clans, land, and everything medieval.
Oh, here comes Mihal. Here comes Mihal.
Jesus, that's not triggering at all, is it? I don't see bloody anyone.
We're all alone in the universe.
I know. Why isn't people being notified and jumping in? Normally people are coming in to the old chat and stuff. I'll pop over to your one to see if your one's turned on. Yeah, your one's turned on as well.
Okay. Hi, Tommy Core. Hello, good evening. Why is this so early? It's the same. It was the same time last weekend.
If it's early, it should be early enough if you're coming over from the States, because myself and Rachel normally do a later live stream, but this one's more what was it called, added towards the Irish live stream side of things, because the lads have to go to bed and go to work. So this is mostly the most reasonable time to keep the lads up, so you can answer questions
and to keep us out of the pub on a Saturday night.
Hi. Why would I want to keep your lives on easy mode, huh?
It's too expensive to go to a pub in Ireland.
Yeah, I've seen the prices going up. But how much is it for a pint now?
I don't know, because I rarely go. Where I live, it's probably pushing 6, but in Dublin, it's probably nuts. It's probably almost like 9 or something, which makes no sense. 4 p.m. Saturday, New York time.
4 p.m. So it's 4 p.m. New York time, and it's 9 p.m. for you, Owen, is it?
Yeah.
That's about
5-hour difference. 5-hour difference.
Yeah. Not too bad. So, and then over in Japan, it is 6 a.m. in the morning.
Yuck.
I think ended up getting about 3 hours sleep last night. Just spent most of the night up. What was it called? Chatting away to the wife. Like, we ended up doing that a lot. Like, where between my wife reading books and stuff and us just randomly chatting away, we end up staying up until about midnight or something every bloody time. Like, just talking, just random stuff. Like, and then my wife bitching.
You don't have kids yet. Enjoy it while it lasts.
I know. Bloody well will. Me all jumping in and out of the chat like there's no tomorrow. We forgot to. We were supposed to. Did we say we are going to start off and talk about something at the start? I can't bloody remember.
I don't know. I've been running around. Everybody in my family seems to be going to hospitals at the moment, except me. So my mind
Oh, well,
is
that's good. Not
good.
good for the rest of your family. Good for you, though.
Oh, I'm driving. I'm driving.
Oh, well.
I'm learning all about how to drive around Cork City.
Oh,
Woohoo!
did you? Oh, even better again, like, especially in this day and age. How bad is Cork getting lately?
It, hello, outrageous. Cork is okay. It's
Hmm.
until Mallow, until just after Mallow is great,
Yeah.
because there's two lanes, and then you reach the Mallow bypass, and then it's one lane. Then it
Hmm.
gets two lanes at all again, and then you come to the mad roundabouts to get into Cork City, and then
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just go crazy. Have as many kids as you can. Only if you're a king. Only if you're a king. Children are expensive, even in Ireland where there's a lot of support and you can send them to public school. They
yeah.
still seem to eat my money.
Yeah, they do like eating money, don't they?
They
It's not
do.
even actual food anymore. It's just pure money to eat these
Just
days.
slice of toast, €50. That's breakfast.
Oh,
You're the king of your own clan. I wish. I wish. I'd be rich.
yeah, they don't even tell you what to do. They don't even listen to the thing you're doing these days. Mihal, you're jumping in and out like there's no
Oh,
tomorrow.
I see his
Uh,
face finally.
yeah, I've been ill all week,
Hmm.
and so I haven't been anywhere near my PC. So when I set it all up, it was just all over the place, basically. So I was in the background making sure that news went live, no problem.
Jesus, you sound very bad as well.
Yeah, I'm still not recovered. Like, but I couldn't on Wednesday and Thursday. I couldn't even speak. I had
Yeah,
no voice at
Jesus.
all. So today's the first day I've been able to speak, and as you can hear, it's a bit ropey. So if I start, if I look like I'm mute, I'm not. I've just probably lost my voice.
Yeah.
So how are
Oh,
we keeping anyway?
yeah,
Oh, alive.
grand. Same old, same old.
So people have Sloan Roblox, hi free Coco. I think that's how you pronounce your name. So people are saying hello. People are saying hello. Fulcha.
Oh,
Hello. How to
okay.
root.
My other screen's not even working, so that'll be fun. Uh so I've got nothing set up on my side. I'm too busy trying to fix this bloody thing. Where were we up to? What did I miss? I could see you talking, but I couldn't hear you.
Just
We're
talking
just
shite, to be honest with you.
hi Dennis. Hi Dennis. We were talking about the
What's Dennis
traffic.
speaking about?
Since Dennis has come on, we were talking about the traffic around Cork, and Dennis knows that well because he's from Kinsale. Hi Jim.
Ah, where's Jim at? Oh, Jim O'Neill. How you keeping, Jim? Any news with yourself? Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully, Mihal gets better. Is right.
Yeah, thank you. I've got I don't even know where I put I've got my lozenges for my throat. I've got
Mm.
a warm drink. I mean, it says avoid caffeine and nicotine, but I'm not avoiding either, and alcohol, but it's got Baileys in it, so
Yeah.
I'm avoiding those. So I'm probably not helping myself really. It's self inflicted.
Hi. I spent the day yesterday. They were talking about. I don't know if you guys were listening to it. All right, and Gone Medieval, not their podcast, but their YouTube channel. I was looking at it yesterday, and they were talking about how they wanted to change the name for the Peasants' Revolt in the 14th century, the one where Richard the Second goes over and batters his own peasants for not getting in line because of the fact that after the Black Death they wanted better rights, better pay, etc., etc., etc. And it's something that we definitely do need to pay attention to on our side because just as that's happening over in England, in Ireland we have the rise of Art MacMore Kavanagh, and we have the Gaelic resurgence in Ireland. It's very interesting that we don't have a Barons Revolt, and at the same time, any fighting that we do have in Ireland is mostly pointed towards the English and the Statutes of Kilkenny that were put in place in 1366. And it's interesting how, the Statutes of Kilkenny gets put in place in 1366, and by 1370, Art MacMurrough has captured castles, and he's even managed to capture the tribute from Dublin at the same time. And I do wonder, and it'd be interesting to talk about today, the differences as well with the tenants that you see in England, where you have serfdom in England, where in Ireland you have the barons, the Anglo-Irish barons that try to bring in um, serfdom into Ireland, and it doesn't kind of work, does it, Owen?
Yeah. Well, first of all, yeah, Mihal, your microphone is a bit too strong. There's all sorts of interference coming in, and Tara, Nerney, yeah, we're all from Ireland. I live down in Kerry in Valencia. Mihal lives up somewhere in the north,
Mm.
and Philip's from Mallow, I think Mallow, aren't you?
Mallow boy. Oh,
Mallow
I.
boy. Uh,
Mallow.
but he got the wrong. He went to Kerry one day and turned left and ended up in Japan.
Oh, I.
Yeah,
Just went out for a walk.
exactly. It happens. It happens. Just in relation to barons, the Barons' War, the Peasants' Revolts, Art MacMurrough Kavanagh, I think that shows A, how different Ireland was from
Mm.
England, and
Yeah.
B, the incomplete nature of the Anglo-Norman invasion, whatever you want to call it. So
Mm, mm, mm.
when I learned Irish history in school, in primary school, we got told about the Norman invasion, and then I think in first and second year we learned about the 16th century, like the from 1485 to 1603. You never really do in school the mid part, and I have a feeling it's jumped over it's jumped over too big. But there's all sorts of interesting things going in. Um,
Mm.
there isn't the Barons' revolt because the king is not in Ireland.
Yeah.
There is a Lord Lieutenant who changes a bit, but the Lord Lieutenant, he can never get too powerful because if he does, the King of England will stab him in the back and chop his head off.
Yeah.
Or other Anglo-Irish lords will gang up on him. And also because you have the Gaelic lords. So
Mm.
it's a very different system. And because there's no monarch, you can't have a monarch who wants to start like the peasants revolt that started, I'm fairly sure, because of a poll tax. He brought in a
Mm.
poll tax, so everybody had to pay a certain amount, which triggered a lot of people. In Ireland, the English state in Ireland was unable to do that.
Mm.
Um, so like the English state was never that powerful. It was expanding, it was developing institutions, it was strengthening, but it never conquered the whole country. And the main lords like Butler, Desmond, Fitzgerald, and some of the minor ones always balanced each other out. So
Mm.
and they kind of were, sometimes they monopolized the actual state itself. Sometimes the state was fighting them. So it was a much more complicated situation. I think a much more interesting situation because English history is just from William until the end. This is me being cynical. From William until the
Mm.
Battle of Bosworth, it's just one revolt after another. And they say the
Yeah.
Irish were disorganized. English medieval history is crazy.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because it is very funny because I constantly get a thing of like, oh, why couldn't the Irish come together? Why couldn't they just, fight the English or the Vikings or any like that? I get that like commonly all the time, like the classic 150 tribes constantly warring, never getting together, with no understanding of how the tooth system worked in Ireland, or how does any of it work, to be honest with you. You constantly get questions like that. um, when if you look at England's also another area that's like civil war after civil war after civil war. They literally go from an organized war against another realm to suddenly civilized, fighting amongst themselves. So yeah, you're completely right. Like if you take, for example, the Norman invasion of Ireland, you know, Henry II is going between a civil war against his own barons and then switching over, fighting a civil war against his own kids, and then suddenly having a civil war against his own clergy with Thomas Becket, when he suddenly has to, tries to find a reason to escape over to Ireland. So you're perfectly right. And it's the same thing during the Peasants' Revolt that's happening. What Gone Medieval were trying to change, because they want to change the name of the Peasants' Revolt to the something like on the lines of the Great Revolt or something. That's what they're thinking of, and the reason for it is because the revolt in England isn't just a peasants' revolt alone. It's a revolt that's made up of many different, groups, from the rich all the way down to the bottom as serfdom, because the whole society seems to be very, very annoyed at Richard II. At the same time, Richard II is somebody, even today, like if you're listening to Gone Medieval, you'll know straight away that the academics find it very easy to demonize Richard II. And it was the same at the time, like literally in the era itself. Many people, even inside of Richard II's own court, were demonizing Richard II. It's the reason why he needed to create his own personal bodyguards in his own site, in his own court. And also, on top of that, as well, the reason why his court in London had to move to Chester, the fact that he had so many enemies inside of his own circle, was wild. And you still see it today, like.
Yeah, like the, in English history, the English generally, the popular idea, they seem to jump over so
Mm,
many of these revolts. Like even in the Tudors,
mm,
the Pilgrimage of Grace,
mm.
that was massive. If you look at the numbers involved in the north of England, who got involved in this thing, it was basically against Henry's conversion or creation of the Church of England.
Mm,
There's many tens of thousands, and like Henry was very, very nervous about that, and
mm,
he was actually lucky in that the the pilgrim, as you can call them, they had this. They kind of thought that Henry wasn't so bad; it's his advisors, and
mm,
they let themselves be fooled by Henry. He said, "Okay, come down to London and we'll discuss everything." And he guaranteed their safety. And as soon as they came to London, he threw them in prison and chopped their heads off.
yeah.
If they had been more radical or more hard nosed, better rebels,
Mm,
they could have split England in half, even toppled Henry.
mm,
And like the anarchy, the fights against King John, like even after King John dies, this is well forgotten. Everyone said, this all these invasions of England that get forgotten. The
mm,
French, the French had captured London. The French were bopping around a lot of England. First, the barons against John. Then John dies, and William Marshall manages to defeat the French. I think it's the
mm.
Battle of Lincoln, though I could be wrong. Never go to London. Good point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so you have all these revolts, and like I read about them, I find them like they're very complicated. No wonder the Irish never unified, but they were too busy trying to keep up with what the English were doing. It was too confusing.
Mm, mm,
And I'm not
mm.
even mentioning Jacobites. Someone mentioned the Jacobites. Um,
Yeah, and the Jacobites were quite popular for quite some time because of the what was it, Outlander, wasn't it? Was it Outlander, Mihal, that show where what was it called? It was on Netflix.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
managed. Mihal, you've gone all quiet now. You're muted.
I muted myself there because I was
Okay.
typing in my chat on TikTok. I don't want my big clunky keyboard. Yeah, the Jacobites. Outlander reinvigorated it, but they've always had an air. But even in the 18th century, they had this air of romanticism about them, and historians will often pro Jacobite historians
Mm.
would obviously romanticize their side, whereas the pro British. I'd say pro British is a bit ridiculous because Jacobites are still technically British, but the pro Hanoverian Parliament government would obviously shed them in a more villainous light. Like Scottish history, I think really epitomizes the civilized barbarian. Is it that's the term you used, Owen? Civilized barbarian before, and they're really. So it kind of comes in waves, whether that's right back from '95 with Braveheart, or coming back with the Outlander or Rob Roy.
That's what a movie.
It,
Yeah,
go,
yeah,
it, goes,
but
it goes back to Walter Scott. Walter
Mm.
yeah,
Scott invents this myth,
yeah.
and like to a large extent, he invents clan tartans and tartan, etc.
Mm.
And also the myth that the Jacobites were Highlanders. There's a good book. I'm not at my own house. I can't look at it. I think it's called The Myth of the Jacobite Cause.
Mm.
He's a very good historian. He basically shows that if you look at the Jacobite armies in 1745, 1746, the Jacobites had huge support throughout Scotland, and
Mm.
half the army were lowlanders. It
Well,
wasn't just
I
clans.
will. I will do one better. And say, check out my video
Okay.
on which clans fought at the Jacobites because I went and researched every laird, bar, noble, everything, any one of status, obviously, because the lower echelons, anyone below an ensign, anyone who didn't hold some sort of rank aren't really recorded. But I went back and I found uh, all the ones that were recorded as being written down as Jacobites, as being whether that's in government papers, whether that's in other records, and I mapped them on a video where they are, and then I drew a line in the the border of the Highland line as they call it, and you can
Mm.
see the how separated and how you would think for something that's meant to be this Gaelic revival in Scotland, this Highland sort of it's only the Highlands. You would think you'd see the cluster primarily around the Isles and the Highlands, but like you have stated and like other historians have pointed out, it's quite widespread. And there's actually a discussion quite interestingly happened. I haven't been able to watch it yet, but I've favorited it to come back to it about actually that like in the modern day, a lot of people who would be of Gaelic descent, in not from the Irish diaspora who would come in the 18th and 19th century or 19th and 20th century, but of Gaelic, seem to be more unionists today than
Oh, really?
yeah. So it's an interesting thing that I want to have a look at and see how it
Yeah,
ties up.
that's got. I want to make 2 points. First, to answer that, that's got to do with Scottish politics. So the Irish went in there, and they were poor. They were the poorest of the poor, and everybody tended to hate them, especially in the 19th century.
Mm.
And you have because you had very little at the beginning of the 19th century. There was very few Catholics left in Scotland.
Mm.
And they suddenly go in, and you have this anti-Catholic thing, um, and most of them would end up in the cities, Glasgow, Edinburgh, poor working class, and they all became Labour voters,
Mm,
in part because the Scots nationalists were very Protestant
mm,
until the 1960s, 1970s. It
mm.
was quite a conservative nationalism.
Yeah.
Um, and then that changed, that over the last few decades, that has changed enormously. Like, if you look at football clubs, I think the first Catholic football club in Scotland was Hibernian. And that was
Yeah.
Catholic, but I think was kind of non-denominational. But then, as far as I know, I think it was the Catholic bishop of Glasgow pushed Celtic, and like
Mm,
they like, so in you have Glasgow Celtic, Glasgow Rangers, uh, Catholic and Protestant. In Edinburgh, you have Hibernian, who predate
mm,
Rangers, and Hearts,
mm.
which sort of, in a way, they import the sectarianism of Northern Ireland into Scotland. It's an interesting question. And another thing, just because you mentioned about Outlander, I always find it funny. Like, yeah, I love reading about the 1745, but
Mm,
I find more interesting 1645, 1646. You
mm,
have Montrose, and you have the Irish Brigade, and like,
mm.
it's a small group, and they do amazing stuff. Um, and like, a lot of them are, the Irish Brigade are led by MacDonald, who died down near Mal somewhere. He
Mm.
actually he died in a battle, I think, Knocknouse, which is in Duhallow. Speaking of
Yeah.
Wayne, but no one seems to. That's not romanticized. There's no TV series, no documentary. Well, there are a few, but it's really much the poor cousin.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I just want to pop back to one of Caveman's much more earlier comments there, Mihal, one where he says the barons didn't want to sacrifice personal wealth for the king's campaign in France. I kind of like that one because I did a good bit of reading on the Hundred Years' War as well. And it is very interesting that you do see a lack of willingness on the part of the Fitzgeralds and the De Burghs and stuff to deploy over to France. But on the flip side of things, it seems like the Butlers couldn't wait to send people over to France or to, raise big, massive military forces. Like, you're right to say that it did cost a lot of money to raise a military force in Ireland to send over to France to fight in the Hundred Years' War. But at the same time, as Dr. Melissa Shields was saying a few weeks back, it was a great way to show off, I have the biggest sausage on the island, especially on an island that, it was all about who, when you don't have a high kingship and it mostly revolves around assemblies and Irish parliaments. It's nice to have the biggest sausage when you're rocking up to those assemblies, and there's no better way to do it than early on in the 13th century, then going on crusades, and then as you go into the likes of the 14th, 15th century, to raise large military forces to go and fight in France. And I think that was a great way for the Butlers to show off that, hey, look, we have the biggest sausage on the island, than to raise a large, expensive military force and to go off to France to fight, in my interpretation. So, yeah, I do fully agree, Caveman. When it comes down to the likes of the Fitzgeralds and the Bergs, they were more interested in what was happening in Ireland, to a certain degree. They also did like jumping over to Spain and Florence at the same time, so maybe it's not completely true. But the Butlers, they definitely couldn't wait to raise a large military force and pop over to France, in my interpretation. Maybe they didn't know as much as other English families at the time, but the Butlers were definitely involved, in my opinion.
Right, I'm just want to go. Where was that? So this one back to Keep On again.
Mm,
Lowlands and Highlands are equal. Both had great clans. The Lowlands are very famous ones, such as Bruce's Walston, because I think
mm,
clan in that context is a very, very. We've already kind of discussed it, and I'm sure we will again. The clan overall is a very modern term, but I think
mm,
applying clans to the lowlands is an even more modern, interpretation. I wouldn't personally call any of the lowland families, with the exception of the Elliots, a clan from the Reaver families. I wouldn't even really class many of the Norman families as clans in Scotland, although some of them would start to obviously operate in that sort of, the Elliots are again another example of that, would start to operate within that sphere because it's politically, better for them to operate like that as their neighbours do, using what their neighbours use, the systems that their neighbours use to, maintain their status in the area. So yeah, I would never call the Bruces a clan, the Douglases a clan, and I know there's an argument for not really applying it to many families, even Gaelic or Gaelic ones. But for they are just dynasties, noble houses. They don't operate the same way as the MacDonalds. But yes, but on the same aspect, the sentiment of the comment is true, that there's some really, great families, really important players on both sides of conflicts. There's no point picking a side in a battle that happened in the 17th century. It's done. The conclusion's already happened. So yeah. That was just my 50-pence piece of that, Caveman.
Can I just throw in something? I know that Stephen Ellis, he's professor, I think, of modern history, or he may have retired in what was UCG, University College Galway. It could be NUIG now. He maintains that there were name groups in the north of England who operated like the Irish Seps. I have problems with the word clans, so does he. But he said there were large groups, like some of them were bandits, some were more powerful. And then one example, the Percys. The Percys came over with, I think it was a baron, came with William the Conqueror. And then you find them in 16th, 17th century Ireland. And it's fun, like one of the Percys gets killed in the Battle of the Yellow Ford. And I think his brother, who was Earl of, could have been Northumberland, his brother, his father, his grandfather, and I think eventually his nephew, all die in jail or executed by the English government. Like sort of, it's you talk about rebels, the Percy family, in that stage got into big trouble. And I have a feeling that there still is a Percy noble family. They may have died out, and someone may have readopted the name as happened a lot in the 19th century. But it was a kin group the same as Wallace's and Douglas's.
I do have a book on the Percys, actually, but I don't know where I've put it. Yes, I have a book on the Percys. The family still extant. Some of them still hold titles. Like you say, whether that's a patrilineal line going right back, or whether it's name changes or matrilineal marriage and adopting names, I'm not sure of every line. But yes, there's even an argument that in the northern regions that some Anglo-Saxon groups were operating in a similar fashion too. I think really that's not a far-fetched idea, since kind of like most of society, Iron Age Europe was kind of operating we still see similar fashions in parts of Africa, parts of the Middle East. The clan system, the core parts of a clan system, it's familial. It's just a center around a family, and whether you have and normally you have an identifier, most commonly a name, that links you all together. It's not polygenetic. In most countries, it's not polygenetic, but you just have this connection that unites the people. It's like a nation, especially today. It's like a nation within a nation, and often they started from nations. So yeah, I mean, it's not that far fetched for the English to do it too. Obviously, families. I think obviously as feudalism sort of comes from Europe and comes into England, that feudalistic model anyway, and then just gets refined over time. Families try to steps within those families, individuals within those families try to centralize more of the power because the king's done that. He's centralized all the power. He's made the Kingdom of England. So they're trying to mimic that in another fashion, whether it be ducal, whether it be, earldoms. And I think, if Ireland had ever got centralized earlier under Brian Boru, I personally think we would have adopted a similar thing. I think the clan system is what we grew primarily was bore out of the circumstances that we had.
Just to take a step back for everyone else now, because hunting for videos and all this kind of stuff is on YouTube right now is a pain in the hole, to be honest with you. Just to define from the Gaelic perspective, as simple as possible, what is a clan, okay? And why wouldn't the Gaelic consider the Anglo-Irish in the 15th century a clan?
Is that a question? Sorry, I didn't know if you were.
Yeah. That's a question for you guys. Like, because
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I agree with you. Because, like, for example, the Burgos, who become the Burkes, MacWilliam, Upper MacWilliam and Lower MacWilliam, they are of Anglo-Norman descent, but everybody around them sees. I don't like the word clan, but they're operating a Gaelic lordship. Take the Butlers, the most pro-English. They were operating a Gaelic lordship. The main difference comes down to, there's a couple of differences. The Butlers and the Fitzgeralds and most of the other ones will say, we're English. We're English born in Ireland.
Yeah.
And they will follow English. They use both laws. But when it comes down to inheritance, they follow. Though there are some shenanigans where they do some legal stuff that messes up, but it's sort of the eldest son inherits. Whereas Turlough O'Brien dies, and it's the most powerful, eligible O'Brien who inherits, often after conflict. That to me is the big difference. There are some other cultural differences, but they're all operating lordships. And like you take the Butlers, and you have minor. You have the Butlers start spreading out. Like you have the Butlers in Kilkenny. You have Lord Mountgarrett, who I think could almost be in Wexford. You have Lord Kerr, and I'm fairly sure there's other branches of the Butlers. If you look at the Fitzgeralds, you have Desmond, you have Lord Fitzmaurice, who are offshoots. You have the Knight of Kerry, the Knight of Glyn, and the Fitzgibbons, the White Knights, who are descendants as well. So you have kind of the same tendency to split. But again, I think it comes down to an inheritance of the title.
I kind of agree. I kind of agree with Owen on that aspect. I don't see Butlers are a perfect example because of just how pro-English government they sort of lent throughout their entire history. So you would expect them to be on the far side of the sphere of the clan system. But you can see, or said, you can see how they operate, keeping their septs, their cadet branches. I mean, a sept is just a cadet branch, and cadet branches are acknowledged in medieval England. It's not seen as a foreign thing. They still keep their septs well within their sphere of influence. And in Ireland, more in Ireland than an English family, because In Ireland, they're kind of forced to give land within their sphere of influence, within their area of control, to solidify their position. In England, they don't have to really worry about the same factors that they have to worry about in Ireland, and their area of control is quite small in comparison to, you know, if they're relying on the king to give a cousin, a brother, an individual in the family a piece of land. He will 9 times out of 10 give him land further afield as well, because another reason is that if you look at English lordships and titles, they're never together, and that actually comes from William the Conqueror, I believe, or immediate descendants, was to distribute land fractured, because if it's solidified, you can collect your army quicker. Thus, if you are a rebellious lord, you have all your, basically your whole army within a day-to-day march. But if you keep all your assets and all your lands fractured, you're easier to encircle and chip away at as a king. If you are in open rebellion, it's harder for you to gather your resources. It's harder to do it in secret. But in Ireland, they don't have that luxury of doing that, because there are these just really small pockets of control. But like I say, the Butlers they gave lands to the O'Mearas. They moved the O'Mearas from Kilkenny to the Upper Ormond Barony on the coast of Clare, on the borders of Clare, as a buffer between the Kennedys and them. They're still distributing land to Gaelic families. None of these, I don't think any of these are looking at each other as complete foreigners acting, because we watch Irish families do the same thing.
Are you talking about the Butlers and what was it called? And the different clans and stuff, is it?
Yeah, so they're moving clans around, but
Yeah.
the same way clans, Lords McCarthy's are moving families around. They're not doing anything different. They're just using the tools that they have to hand, political tools.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because I definitely would agree with you guys on what you've been saying there, because from 1220 onwards, you can call them Hiberno-Normans, Anglo-Normans, or Anglo-Irish, or whatever. I don't really mind what modern word you like to use. But from 1220 onwards, there's a lot of major stuff happening in Ireland. First and foremost, like the Bergs are married into the O'Briens. The the Lacey's are married into the O'Connors. So there's straight away these marriage bonds kicking off. But at the same time, when the Anglo-Normans do appear in Ireland, and they're appearing in the south, the southeast of Ireland, and they try to bring in their Norman customs, the old French system, into Ireland, they have to bastardize it from the get-go. For example, the tenant system that they were talking about yesterday on Gone Medieval. Anytime I've done any research into the tenant system in Ireland, the problem is the Irish have a tendency of just running away. You put them on a piece of land to go farming and stuff, and you come back an hour later and they've ran away up into the mountains and stuff. I don't think you have that problem in England. You give someone a piece of land and you expect them to pay rent to you as a lord. You don't expect to rock up half an hour later and they've run off up into the mountain. And so it seems to me that from the get-go, the likes of the Bergs and the Lacey's have to adopt and bastardize their laws. So I definitely would agree with you that you're not dealing with a kind of, English system in Ireland. What you're dealing with is a kind of bastard European system in Ireland, especially in the southeast of the island of Ireland.
Just if I can make 2 points. In relation to the peasants, until the 17th century, Ireland had a lot of land. Ireland had a lot of land, and it had a shortage of peasantry to farm the land. So if you treated your peasants badly, they'd do as you said. They'd just move.
Yeah.
They'd say, okay, Joe Bloggs here is treating us bad. I know that Lord such and such down the road needs people. and he'll promise he'll treat us much nice and they much better, and they did that.
Mm,
Secondly, in relation to land, um, I just when Michal was speaking, I just remembered that this fragmentation of lordships in England is international. Because if you look at the
mm,
various wars between England and France, many English lords are also the French king is their sovereign because they have so much land there, and
mm,
not the English king is the French king is his sovereign. They're both intermixed. They both have lands that owe fealty to each other. It's crazy.
mm,
And then when you look at Gaelic Ireland, in Gaelic, the Normans brought with them the idea of writing down land ownership. So William takes
mm.
the island and he divides it up, but people keep
Yeah.
and they start taking a record. Whereas in Gaelic Ireland, okay, maybe Mallow was Philip's land, but we
Mm,
kicked him out of Mallow 50 years ago. I've
yeah.
been farming. I've been using Mallow for the last 50 years. Therefore, it's mine. And the English rock up and say, no, look, uh, this guy, he was given the lordship of Mallow 500 years ago. The Gaelic lord
Mm,
says, so what? The English court says, no, Lord Carew or someone like that, he's the owner. Um,
mm.
and when English law got more powerful, that creates a lot of problems. The Gaelic Irish,
Yeah.
they didn't, they basically, who held the land owned it. And it could be
Mm,
me today, it could be me Hall next week, and it could be Philip the week after.
yeah. 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 It's interesting times, all right, especially the way Ireland does function. And it's kind of one of my problems, and I've said this a few times on my shorts, is modern interpretation where people put up maps of Ireland, and it also wrecks Mihal's head as well. And they'll have, clan so and so, and they'll give him like exact land, like he
Yeah.
owned this piece of land when even when you go into the culture, never mind the fighting, right? So if we hop over to 1250, for example, where you have the English forces in Ireland, we go into, we'll hit it exactly nail on the head, 1257, when you have Brian O'Neill's Revolt and the Tomad Wars, which, by the way, I'm talking about tomorrow from Patreon. So if you want more detail about this, definitely hop over to my Patreon. But anyway, regardless,
Plug,
if you
plug,
pop
plug.
over to Brian O'Neill's Revolts in the Tomad Wars, and the English forces are taking direct land and stuff, and then you have the O'Briens who push back, and you can never tell, especially because of the tactics of the O'Briens, which more revolves around ambushes, quick attacks, constantly raiding. It's very difficult to tell, where the O'Briens are operating, which lands they're occupying.
um,
But at the flip side of things, even culturally, and sorry for me, Hall, just let
yeah.
me finish this point here. Even culturally, even when the O'Briens are not at war, because they're constantly cattle raiding and the movement of land because of pasturing, even when things are peaceful, if you look at between the lands between the Fitzgeralds, the McCarthys, and the O'Briens, because of pasturing and cattle raiding, even in times of peace, it's very difficult to see who's operating in which land, where, and when. So even culturally, I think there's problems on who's owning what land.
It's also I mean it's well documented in English literature, not literature, English records of who owns land in Ireland, these Anglo-Norman
Mm,
lords. And it's very specific on the areas. It gives the villages that they will own. It gives the regions that they own. The thing is, you should almost not take that for verbatim, because the English are writing down are giving land they do not own, they do not control,
mm,
they cannot get the
yeah,
rents from. I think it's the Fitzstevens. It may not have been the Fitzstevens, but there's records of like the O'Driscolls. They have an overlord. I can't remember. It's like that. It's the Carews, or it's one of the groups. Their name skips me. But anyway, we have records of the O'Driscolls paying rent whenever they first come. They're paying they're paying their rents. They're paying the taxes, And we just see basically over a 10-year period, 11-year period, it just gets less and less and less and less until they're not paying anything. And there's just this big blank spot in the tax records because the O'Driscolls aren't paying them but they don't need to. There's no English lords coming in there to claim them. The County Clare, the declares, they were given Thomond, and but they never really. Very briefly, but by the time the heiresses of the Clare household, I think it was two daughters, had inherited the kingdom of Thomond effectively. They just let it go they just left it. They never chased their rights to this kingdom because they knew they could never enforce it. Even though all the English records and all the taxman's looking at it like going, you own this, they're just saying, well, we can't get anything from it, because we don't own it. We just say we do. So yeah, it's a lot of, don't get me wrong, we have an idea on a lot of families give their name to townlands. Wider king groups give their names to tours, and we can sort of get a very brief snapshot image, but it's so to go right down and go, my family owned that field, unless it was, unless the bank's got your deed in it right now, I wouldn't even pay much heed to it.
There is at the end of the 16th century, because English law is expanding, there are some very good snapshots, especially the Desmond survey, which is basically the Beara Peninsula, Evora, and a couple of other parts of Cork and Kerry. It was a McCarthy Moore lordship. The last guy, what's his name? Donald died. And the English map out, basically you can tell who owned what field in 1596. And then you'll see this nice map and it will say McCarthy Moore, except of Evora, more of the land was held by O'Sullivan Moore, and then Beara was O'Sullivan Beara. McCarthy Moore was their overlord, but and McCarthy Moore held relatively little land in his lordship. Like, he held a lot of land, but it's not the whole thing at all. So it's these maps that take a picture are problematic, to say the least.
Yeah, I've talked about it before because I use maps quite a lot, and that they, no map, it's a very static snapshot of a very specific moment. A lot of them, and even then, it's a blurry one at best. And no one ever, I don't think I've ever seen a map that truly shows Ireland. I think if someone had it in them, I think AI might be able to do this eventually, but if someone had it in them, a really good thing to do would be to map every castle in Ireland and then mark who owned it at which time, and then have like a scroller of dates, and then you click it and you could see how the map would change as each family takes these castles.
If you take the long gone Killorglin Castle, the Fitzgeralds of Desmond built it. It gets burned down by the McCarthys, who then build their own, who get burned down by the Desmond.
But that's the point I'm trying to raise.
You'd have your work cut out for you. It's going on and on. Dennis just asked a question about the Normans in Ireland paying tribute back to the English king. There was a slight problem in that they never made money. Sort of taxation and taxation agreements like, here, you get this land and you pay the king X marks per annum, but you're in a different island and the king has got to spend money to get the money, and it takes, in the meantime, the king is more interested in you defending the English kingdom in Ireland than money. Ireland never really made money for England until the 17th century.
Mm.
It's because essentially the whole system was corrupt, and everyone was always officially, they would always plead, "Oh no, we don't have the money." They might pay a bit of tax every so often, but they
Why have
would,
we not changed?
yeah, it's human nature. Um, Sort of, oh yeah, but like I spent all the money defending against the bad Irish. The bad Irish burnt down my castle, and or they tried to burn all your towns, and they're all poor here. So it's like, theoretically they'd be sending money. And if you look at Surrender and Grant, under Henry and Elizabeth, theoretically all these guys are supposed to be paying money to Elizabeth, but no one ever did.
I just want to.
After
I'm sorry.
800 years, like you look at the Irish Parliament today and the EU sending money over, and the EU's like, what happened to all that money? It went into this building project that never got completed.
No,
I don't know.
to be fair, Ireland now is a net contributor to the EU, so the
Yeah.
money comes out.
I will say there was a funny. I used to work for a company, and it had a base in Dublin and it had a base in Belfast.
Yeah.
We were project coordinators, and they moved the whole department, the whole company to the Belfast, and the reason for it was because they were basically so you'd have contractors who would go out to all these things. They were in Dublin. People were ringing up and going like, "Oh, I want a project on my house, or whatever, business," and they'd be like, "Is that Owen O'Neill?" And he's like, "Yeah." It's like it's Michael. I went to school with your aunt. I went to school with your great co. Ah, sure, I'll get you this for 50% off. I'll get you this for 50% off. Yeah, and they were just they weren't making any money in Dublin, so they came to Belfast, where we're obviously I'm sure there's many people in here like Protestant work ethic, and we were a little more stingy about it, but yeah, it's so true, about like you guys down there. Us in the north, we've never been a problem. You guys are the problem children in Irish history.
Which mean problem? At least we get the money. Like you lads are just handing it away.
But I will just say, I just got. I have my TikTok has been mad for questions here, so
Go on there.
I just want to make sure they're not getting forgotten. So Eric Murray was talking when we were talking about wealth anyway. So it's kind of like the Irish are pastoral. And pastoral wealth is in the animals, not the land, which is true. Our cattle were our wealth, not our land per se. You need the land to raise the cattle, to raise and feed the cattle and whatnot. But I do see the point there, and cattle were our lifeblood, really.
But there was a lot more arable. There were a lot more crops being grown than people realize.
Yes.
And you see this when the English are going burning, and they discover, they say, how come these barbarians are planting so many crops we never knew? And said, well, just look at the state papers from 100 years ago when Lord Deputy such and such passed here. So there were a lot more things, and also another source of income would have been trade. Hunting birds. The Irish were exporting hunting birds, pelts, stuff like that. So cattle were wealth, but there were other sources as well.
Herds are mobile, they're easy to hide your wealth. I mean that the cattle there's a lot of cattle. It's quite hard to hide 1,000 cattle. People are tracking that because raiding season's always just around the corner. But to be fair, and it's not just cattle as well. The sheep. There's the monastic settlements are all growing herbs and crop. So yeah, it's a wide variety of farming And it's so different to the rest of Europe. That's a point we've raised time and time again. Ireland is really no different from the rest of Europe. We're not this special outlier, or this
The
savage outlier.
yeah. The problem is, and I've literally screamed at the top of my voice, and stand by, lads, because I've seen a video in the last. Well, you guys keep sending it to me over the week about tribal Ireland during the Viking Age. So I'll be screaming it from the top of my lungs again this week in another short. But the problem is that people don't understand the king group system in Ireland, right? So I've been asking a few innocent questions there to get the boys up and running there. But to be completely honest with you, it really wrecks my head when people look at England and see a civilized, centralized society, and then look at Ireland and get absolutely frustrated because their simple little brains cannot understand how Ireland functions. So therefore Ireland is stupid. When it's not stupid, you just don't understand how Ireland functions. Ireland functions on the king group system. What is the king group system? The king group system is when you have a clan or tuat or wherever you want to refer to, and it is married and connected into another group, another king group, through marriage alliance, hostages, and also through what was it? Marriage alliances. We have hostages, and then we also have adoption as well, which connects all these groups together in Ireland. During the early medieval period, we have a form of a what was it, high kingship in Ireland. But the problem is then once we go into the high Middle Ages, we have too many families, such as the O'Briens and the O'Neills in particular, who refuse to recognize each other as high kings over each other. So what they do is they have a form of confederation through gift giving or various other means to come together in a form of confederation. O'Neill, you definitely specialise in the late medieval period and Renaissance. How do confederations work, especially going into the 9 Years' War?
Um, well, in the 9 Years' War, it's a different sort of confederation in
Mm,
that there's an oath, and it
yeah,
has clear ideological, like basically to the Hugh O'Neill and the people, his intellectuals, are actively building a sense of Catholic Irishness,
mm,
and it starts off as a Gaelic confederation in Ulster. It
yeah,
starts spreading into North Connacht, parts of Leinster, through the Midlands, like the O'Byrnes and O'Moores especially, and then into Munster, where it was weakest.
yeah,
Uh, it was the most powerful Gaelic confederation in history because it brought in all the powerful Gaelic groups, with the exception of the O'Briens, minus one or two minor O'Briens.
mm,
And sort of, it's one of the few times in Irish history you see the O'Neills and O'Donnells fighting alongside each other.
mm,
Like sort of, but even still, its weakness was like um, Hugh O'Donnell, his cousin Neil Gareth,
mm,
goes over to the English who are in Campton Derry and saves them there because
yeah,
he wants to become the the leader there. Um, just in relation to that,
yeah,
just to derail the question a bit, Jim was asking a question. Jim O'Neill was asking a question about, is holding land different or the same to owning land, which is quite an interesting question because take the O'Neills for example.
mm,
I'm ensconced in Dungannon. I'm the Lord of Tyrone. I will have some of my own land, which I inherited from my father, whatever. While I'm Lord of Dungannon, there is an area, I think it's called O'Neill land, a townland or a half barony, which
Yes.
is which is the land for whoever holds the position. And then I might campaign. Maybe the O'Rourke's annoyed me. I'll run
mm,
into Breffni, and I might take that land. Or maybe one of the minor O'Neills annoyed me. I might like Coombridge, which is now I think where Shane's Castle is, very important. Hugh O'Neill killed that O'Neill and took it over himself. So I'm holding the land. I get the money. It's mine. Legally, it's not. But in Gaelic law, possession is very, very important. Sort of. But when the Lord dies, the next Lord of Lord Dungannon or Lord of Tyrone, he won't own the land that belonged directly to me. It's a complicated system, and
Yeah,
then the O'Rourke could rebel and take back that field. Sorry, Michael, go ahead.
yeah. There was also and obviously we've talked about this before, but it's not almost like a clean, homogenous sort of system all the way through Ireland from top to bottom. There are breakaways. There are certain aspects where, so you would have in your clan system, you'd have like your Kenvina, your close kin. These are probably the higher closest blood. And then as the more unrelated you are to that like king, so you would have like, like if you're thinking of the centralized kingship of England, you have the king and then you have his brothers and their children. They get a bit more say in court. And it's the same sort of system in Ireland. You have the king groups who are sort of closely related to the last chieftain, Taoiseach, and so what happens is there's land that's sort of set aside, and the best land is set aside for the guy ruling. So effectively, when I die and whoever inherits the title, whether through bloodshed or just general inheritance, this is set aside for that. If you hold the crown, you hold this piece of land, because it's primarily the best. And there's certain ones that are, so you have almost like a tenant system as well. So I am part of the clan system, whether I'm actually genetically related, but I have the same surname, whatever. I'm part of it, but I'm just a farmer who has a wee plot of land, a Bowennock with one cow, and no, it's not Bowennock. Is it Bower?
Yeah, Boer.
A Bower with one cow, right? Whenever the king dies or the clan chief dies, I have to go to the new one and sort of say, look, I support you, whatever you need, profess myself to you, prostrate myself to you, and they can just decide now. You side, your uncle sided with the wrong person. I don't like your mustache, and I have no legal claim to that. I can't dispute it. I can't challenge it. That I know that my right to that little plot of land is purely at the behest of the individual. But then there are people who own land who are hereditary holders who have, if I try to encroach on this area and say, no, I'm taking this, they have legal claim, they have legal stance, they have an argument. Whether they can challenge it, depends who has the biggest sword. And I think I was getting to another point on that. Oh yeah, you were saying when the O'Neills came in and the O'Rourkes and stuff like this. I mean, another thing that would happen actually in classes in the early medieval period, especially, not so much later, but was that when a king group moved into an area and claimed an area, what they would do is they would install a sept as the new rulers. And normally it'd be a close kin member, a cousin or a brother. And then that cousin or brother would actually adopt the surname of the area. He would adopt it to legitimize his rule of the area. There's a couple of instances that happen up in Mayo and Sligo that slipped my mind. I think they were O'Donnell's. O'Donnell's. They never got anglicized to O'Donnell, but regardless, you use that sort of to legitimize your position. So you become part of, you adopt that surname, you sort of to lay claim to the land. So it just shows, and families went ahead with that. People just accepted that. So it shows that there's a lot more fluid. There's not this just rigid law. People like to envisage Braham law and legal right and claim as very rigid, but there's a lot of flexibility there if you know how to work it, or if you are
Yeah.
strong enough to bend it.
The last, the last word is pronounced. Which word is that again? For which pronunciation? I'm just curious. And
Just to
what's
change the
that?
conversation, someone asked a long time ago about Carnival,
Mm,
saying like he's just been celebrating Carnival. So Carnival was last week. It ends on Ash Wednesday.
mm,
And he was saying, why, since Ireland is a Catholic country, do we not celebrate Carnival? Um, my answer to that because is I think it was originally Mediterranean.
yeah,
Um,
big time.
like in Ireland, we always mark the beginning of spring with around St. Bridget's Day,
Mm,
Carnival, Shrove Tuesday, etc. Shrove Tuesday, which is the Tuesday of Carnival, was important, but it's like if you go to Spain, if you go to Portugal, the Mediterranean of coast of France and parts of Italy, that's where Carnival starts. Then it's
mm,
brought over to Latin America, and in the last couple of 100 years, it's expanded big. But I have a feeling if you went in 1500 before Luther, so all of Europe is still Catholic officially.
mm,
If you went to England, if you went to Scandinavia, if you went to Denmark or the Netherlands, you're not really going to find Carnival. Where you'll find it
mm,
is maybe it even started with Provence, the who started all that stuff about King Arthur, etc. Sort of,
mm.
I think it starts in a much warmer climate.
Yeah. I think, and the problem is as well, even if there was a form of carnival that got brought over from Spain over to, the likes of Kerry, Cork, that region around there, even if it did happen during the period of Desmond Fitzgerald and the Riccartis and stuff, and how they were trading into Spain and Florence and stuff, even if that did get brought over, I reckon by 1534, and definitely by the time Cromwell kicks over, all that culture would have been booted out of the areas, in my
Yeah, you
opinion,
still
because
have
of
like
the.
bonfires at Lunasan jumping
Mm,
over and some other traditions, a lot of local
yeah.
traditions. I
Yeah.
think Carnival was very localized.
Mm,
It's spread a lot in the
yeah.
last while. The way Halloween has spread
Mm,
and Christmas has spread. So
yeah.
it's become thing. And then someone also asked about the Marshall curse. And I
Mm,
know no, down there someone says, what about the curse of Marshall?
yeah, I know
And
that one all right.
I know nothing about that, so I want to hear it. I
That
hope it's
would so
scary, a
the
horror
martial
story.
curse. It's not really. What
Ah,
happens is that this is around 1220, and first and foremost, you have William Marshall himself, but like straight away from the get go. The problem with who was his father again? Was it Richard Marshall or something on those lines? But anyway, regardless, William Marshall. They're in the middle of the siege, and what was it called? William Marshall's father is inside the siege, and William Marshall is outside, and William Marshall is only Halo. He's a child at this stage, and he's
okay,
taken
okay. I
hostage
saw you.
by the King of England, and the King of England is threatening to tie him up on. First off, he's threatening to hang him, and what was it called? Marshall doesn't care. He's like, I don't care. And so then eventually they tie a noose around his neck. They set up a trebuchet a few hours later because this is a siege. Like it takes weeks from to siege him out of it. And so they tie a noose. They instead of setting up what was it called, a hangman's gallows. This time they set up a trebuchet because they were already going to send rocks his way anyway. So they set up the old trebuchet and they tie a neck around, the noose around Marshall's neck, and they say we're going to slam him against the wall, which was something the Germans, by the way, in the Holy Roman Empire, the Germans were already doing this anyway. They were getting small children and smashing them against walls, and it was working very effective in Germany to get people to surrender. If you got small children, believe it or not, people feel like, oh, geez, better rescue the children and stop this siege. I don't know why. Why would you show any empathy, to be honest with you? And, William Marshall's father would definitely agree with that statement because he turned around to poor little William Marshall and his captives, and he turned around and says, "Yeah, yeah, smash him away against the wall. I have the anvil to make more children." Basically saying, "Hey, look, I'm a happily married man. I've already made a few kids." But the problem is that the marshals over the years were, getting killed off left, right, and center. In fact, William Marshall, if you even look at his life alone, it's very surprising he did survive. He ran around England like a madman, as we were saying earlier, going from civil war to civil war to civil war. And William Marshall was a frontline fighter. Then he went over to France, and he went between the courts of the French realm, the Anjou realm, which was occupied by the English crown at the time, and also he was a mercenary. And when he wasn't doing that, he was actually best friends with what was it, Henry Jr., somebody who didn't survive to become king himself, but he spent most of the time hanging around with Henry Jr., best friends, going to tournaments and getting up to all kinds of wild stuff there as well, where he almost got killed a few times as well, because this wasn't it. Tourneys in the 13th century, sorry, the 12th and 13th century were not like tournaments of today. Tournaments in the late medieval period and Renaissance, where you get two men and they just kind of car crash into each other. During the High Middle Ages, tournaments consists of two war bands coming together and then smashing completely against each other. And then they would also continue fighting with maces. So you get your mace and you pox up someone in the head, but you're concussing them, but you can also kill them as well. Your plan is to just concuss them, and then you quickly jump off your horse, grab them, chuck them onto the back of your horse, and you go off with them, and you ransom them back to the other person's family. It was all laugh. It was all big, banter, really, really funny stuff. But a few times, William Marshall would get the old dent in his head. And one time he would, during a middle of a skirmish, had to run off the field because there were tents and everything set up. He'd ran off the field and he'd go over to a blacksmith who had his tent set up, not his proper workshop at all. And very, very quickly, the blacksmith had to try to find different ways to kind of weld this helmet off his head, because they couldn't get the helmet off his head because the way it had been dumped onto his head. There were plenty, it was very, very normal as well, is that knights would get dumped on the head and they would go home and they would take off the helmet once they were inside their castle and stuff in front of their wife, and their whole skull would fall apart. That was normal, by the way, for that to happen, where they would just take the helmet off, they would take off the cap as well, and the entire skull and everything that was being held together would just fall apart. Very terrifying time indeed. So between the jigs and the reels, a whole load of members of the Marshall family were killed left, right, and centre. And even in the follow-up civil war as well that was fought between Richard the Lionheart and Henry II, was it the Marshalls ended up on opposing sides. William Marshall ended up on the side of, I think it was Richard's side or Henry II's side. Sorry, Richard II's side. So between the jigs and the reels, William Marshall ends up on Henry II's side. And it was, what was it called? Marshall's brother, who actually owned the land, was on the side of Richard Lionheart. And his brother ends up getting killed in this. They end up not fighting against each other in any battle or skirmish, but his brother ends up getting killed, and he ends up inheriting the lands, being the lone surviving marshal. Then he goes over to Ireland, where he marries Isabel de Clare, and he kind of gets into the clique of the kind of Hiberno-Norman clique, or whatever you want to call it, away from the English clique, especially when King John had taken over. The problem is there again is that King John, his court was divided into various branches, and the Hiberno-Norman branch was kind of de-clicked away from the English clique at that point. Because, I guaranteed most of you guys here probably think to yourself, that the English clique was very much in with the English court and stuff. it wasn't at that point. It kind of had their own clique inside of Ireland. But between the jigs and the reels, there ends up being further fighting. Like years afterwards, William Marshall has passed away, so on and so forth, and Richard Marshall had taken over. And there ended up being a dispute between Richard Marshall and the de Burghs over Limerick. The de Burghs had married into the O'Brien family, so the de Burghs reckoned that Limerick belonged to them, especially since they had spent a lot of time protecting the O'Brien family. However, there were branches of the O'Brien family that didn't like the de Burghs and didn't like the way that they were behaving in Limerick, so they sided with Marshall's family. Also, at the same time, the Marshall family had also gone to war with Richard III as well at the time. So they were already sort of excommunicated from England as well. But between the jigs and the reels, it says there was a battle that was fought. I don't really know if there was a battle or not, because looking at the numbers, it was like, 10 knights versus 10 knights. I didn't see any form of kerns or anything as well in the battle. So I reckon it was more of a skirmish. But between the jigs and the reels, anyway, Maurice Fitzgerald, the first Lord of Offaly, ends up killing Richard Marshall. But because of a lack of children being born in the family, and also the fact that they were constantly being killed, it's there where they start referring to as the Marshall curse. So eventually they all end up dying off, and the butlers end up taking over most of their lands from the jigs and the reels.
Yeah, I think he was married into the Butler family, or some of his descendants were. And you forgot his little side gig on the Crusades.
Boy, what happened in the Crusades? I know he did a
Yeah, he
small
went
bit as
off
well
there, like
over
sort
there.
of. I made a video about him in Ireland last year because I was in London and I wandered into Temple Church, and
Yeah,
where he's buried and one or two of his sons are, and you can see the effigies, and it
yeah,
mentioned Strongbow, and I said, hold on
yeah,
a second, he's related to Dermot of the Foreigners, sort of,
yeah, yeah,
which is kind of well hidden in the display there, but
yeah.
he's a very interesting guy.
It's actually hilarious because he's considered in the time period itself. He's considered one of the greatest knights who ever
Yeah, that was
lived.
his subtitle.
But
That's what his
yeah,
subtitle,
yeah,
or whatever you call it.
it's very funny because the English, and even today, the English get proper worked up about it. I was winding him up a few weeks ago, but the English actually hijacked him at the last moment. He died and passed away in Ireland, in England, because he was trying to run the administration over there. Because between the jigs and the reels, it ends up it's the Hiberno-Norman link that has to go back to Ireland, what was it, England, and try to secure Henry III's place in London. I suppose they wanted a sort of a puppet king, but ends up backfiring on them later on. But regardless, William Marshall passes away in England, and just as he's passing away, the English quickly by the way, he dies in the arms of Isabel de Clare, right? So, just as he's passing away, he's in the arms of Isabel de Clare. They're all crying and mourning. The English quickly grab him, right? And they start to, what was it called? Quickly chuck him into a casket, and they start parading his corpse around the south part of England, with a big parade and everything, like the greatest knight who ever lived. And they start from that point onwards, they start re-editing him to the greatest English knight who ever
Yeah.
lived, although he hardly spent any time inside of England
Yeah,
whatsoever. He spent most of his life actually in France. Go
I was
on
going to
there,
say
Owen.
that. What was I going to say? Yeah, he. I think he became a Knights Templar on his death or something.
Yeah.
But if you go to Temple Church, which I recommend, it's a bit strange, but it's a very interesting thing because he is very mixed in with Magna Carta. So King John signs Magna Carta, he's forced to sign it, and then he basically says, "Oh, my fingers were crossed, so that doesn't count," and that restarts the fighting. And when he dies, Marshall reissues Magna Carta with something added onto it, and I think he reissues it a second time. So Magna Carta would have been nothing, but thanks to Marshall, it becomes something big, and then it's become a big propaganda element to the English and their constitution that doesn't exist.
Yeah, a comment section as well. A good few of the comments. Yeah, another few people have as well. Caveman have been telling me all week. All week, people have been bloody sending me messages and everything. I'll try to give a watch today or tomorrow. The Knights of the Seven Kingdoms. Everybody's been bloody telling me to watch that as well. So I'll try to get a hold of that. I was meant to watch a bit of it tomorrow. What was it? Not tomorrow. Yesterday. And I forgot to do so. So I'll see. I said it to the wife that I'll give it a watch because there's Irish weapons and swords and everything in the new Game of Thrones show. So I'll try to watch it.
Oh,
It's the Knights of the Seven Kingdoms.
because
Everybody's been telling me I'll watch. Go
the
on.
guy is a former rugby player, and I think he's Connacht rugby, and he played for
Yeah.
Ireland a bit. And then I was with my mother watching the Ireland-England game today and a bit of the Scotch-Welsh game. And it sounds a little bit like what you were talking about, the joust.
Yeah, that's what it was. But it was all banter anyway.
No one's head comes off, but...
Yeah. What was this one off Caveman as well? The Clares, the Bergs, the De Lacys, and other Norman families all intermarried into the point where names didn't really mean anything. Even with the Gaelic dynasty, many, if not all, were married into one. It's a funny one because it was, your doctor that's down in Cork, Edward Curtis, isn't it? Dr. Edward Curtis, isn't it? The one that's in University College of Cork. He makes the argument of Anglo-Irish, and the reason why he makes the argument of Anglo-Irish is that it is true that the Hiberno-Normans or Anglo-Irish or whatever you want to call them, they do intermarry amongst not just themselves but also between the Gaelic as well. But they always, their eldest child always marries into either the English court or the French court, or into Italy or Spain or whatever. So they did. It is true that they did intermarry amongst themselves. But Dr. Edward Curtis, or Professor Edward Curtis in University College of Cork, did highlight the fact that they did always marry their eldest off to different, overseas and stuff. So that's definitely something to make note of. Owen, you look like you're pondering there on something.
No, I'm just trying to read. I'm on a small laptop instead of my normal because I'm not at home, and I'm trying to read. I'm trying to read the comments.
Ireland? Go on there, Mial.
No, I was just some of the questions on TikTok here. So, I'm gonna. This person's saying I'll do this one first. So, I'm curious about the Cowroos. I have a few choice words about the Cowroos.
One.
My words are probably worse than yours.
Yeah.
I have to hear about this because I know nothing about. Where are they located?
Well, so the Cowroos. Well, I mean, to be fair, the originally it's like the Karen, the Caroom. They're primarily, I think they're sort of they're sort of around with the Fitzstevens and the Cogans in Cork. They have more manors in Cork. They also would have sort of actually, I believe that part of the 1247 Marshall petition, Robert de Carey's mentioned actually in that. They have lands in Carlow, but anyway, they are. I'm just going to say arseholes.
Come on, why?
They're just they're if you can of all the goings on in Irish medieval history, they're mentioned very early on in the annals, right away from the like the 1200s, very like first years or two, the 1200s, late 1100s. They're mentioned in the annals straight off the bat. They're just although they're only given death notices and stuff, but they're prominent figures. But they're just at the head of pretty much every shitstorm that happens in especially there's one individual though that I want Owen to explain.
Okay, I'm going to jump ahead. The Carews disappear from Irish history. They're well gone. Like, they don't last long. They disappear. And then along comes in 1550, more or less, Sir Peter Carew comes to Ireland and says, all this land that's held by the O'Driscolls and other people in Cork is mine. And all these Irish lords say, F off. We've held this for like 200 years. He says, no, it's mine. And he goes to court, and of course the judge agrees and says, yeah,
of course.
And this triggers something for the next 100 years. It destabilizes not just Gaelic lordships, but also many Old English lordships. You have these adventurers who they turn up pieces of paper saying that Henry I or William the Naught, someone gave my great granddaddy a huge chunk of land in Ireland. And I'm sure when they submitted their case to the judge, they probably there was probably a large lump of gold attached.
Oh, yeah.
And because the other people, they wouldn't have documents, so they won. But I think Peter Carew doesn't last long. But I think it's his nephew, George Carew. He's a soldier. He's a soldier fighting in Ireland and elsewhere. But in 1600, he's made Lord President of Munster. Basically, he wins Munster back. He is, he has a brilliant knack for getting people to fight against each other, for tearing people apart, for undoing alliances. As a soldier, he beats all the guys in Munster, but he was sent out to stop Hugh O'Donnell joining up with the Spanish, and his troops are in front of Hugh O'Donnell's, and he goes to Cashel for the night. I think he went drinking or something. And O'Donnell's men basically woke up early, said, oh, look, it's all frozen. Let's run over the mountain, and did. Carew wrote a lot. He didn't like Mountjoy, but Cecil, the Elizabeth's number 2, was his best buddy. So, he was stabbing Mountjoy in the back a lot. He becomes Lord Deputy of Ireland under the Stuarts. The only good thing about him is he kept a load of papers. So we know lots about that period of Irish history thanks to him indirectly.
I think my attitude towards him as well is that he had he employed the scorched earth policy.
He was one of many.
I know. But his actions would almost influence Chichester as well in Ulster. So,
Chichester was the worst.
Chichester
was the worst by far.
Well, being an Ulsterman, but the Carews, like I said, I believe they're a Cambro-Norman family anyway. The Carew is also a surname adopted by a lot of Welsh families, so that will come across. So not all Carews are descended from this bunch of big meanies. But like says, he wrote a lot, and we have, like I say, he was a very intelligent man, very good at what he did. A bit like, I always look at Cromwell the same way, but we have badmouthed Cromwell, but he's very good at what he did.
You mean come in, mass? Okay. We'll move on.
Most of the atrocities that happened under Cromwell, and now we're not going to talk about Drogheda and Wexford. No, because but most of the atrocities that happened under Cromwell actually happened after he left with his son-in-law. His son-in-law's policy was far worse in Ireland than, and obviously Cromwell gets the benefit of the doubt in a sense because actions committed in war are sort of have this own bisection, don't they? You can sort of say, well, that was in war. you know. Whereas his
Are you
son-in-law
finished?
obviously doesn't have a fullback. No, I'm not defending him, but I'm just saying I do believe he does get more of a worse rap than he actually does. He's not the biggest villain in Irish history, yet he
Yeah,
gets given the title.
because
And
his
I
son-in-law's even worse.
no, I think Elizabeth.
Like,
I think Elizabeth's worse.
yeah, I was about to say that. Like Elizabeth, Chichester, and various others are way, way worse than Cromwell. They just kill
Yeah,
everybody. They just kill
Yeah.
everybody.
Oh
yeah.
yeah, like don't get me wrong, I understand what your argument is, but the way you're going about it, do you want shovels there, lads?
No, no,
It's just kind of
that a
funny.
hill
Go
I'll
on.
die on. Hill I'll die on is that we. I'm not saying that he should be sanctified. I'm just
Yeah, yeah,
saying
yeah.
that he shouldn't hold the position we give him. We're focusing on the wrong enemy in
No,
history.
he's still a horrible human being because of the fact of what he did in Drogheda. Like, I think multiple times he could have easily accepted their surrender in Drogheda, and instead he just continues. Even when he's captured the southern part of the fortification, he has complete surrender of the northern side, and yet he decides, kill them all, just keep pushing in.
He never gives that order. That's the thing.
He might as well have.
Right, yeah,
He's
right. So now we're saying, right. I know he gets as the commander in chief of the CEO of the regiment or whatever. Ultimately the blame falls on him, but just because, but he never gives that order. If you look at Cromwell's
but he
whole
didn't
career,
prevent them
he
either.
never he did he even says it's his biggest regret is that he couldn't he actually couldn't do it. Well, not his biggest regret. That's a lie. He had a partial regret that he couldn't do anything about it. But his whole career, I would state that you can see that the two incidents that happen in Ireland are anomalies in his whole career. Now, are the anomalies because he always said, one of his famous sayings is that he would rather trust a Presbyterian's but like he liked Presbyterians more basically he ranked like Irish at the bottom, Presbyterians, and then Royalists at the top, so we kind of were beneath him, but yeah, I just, like I say, it's a whole thing. But his whole career, he is a very devout man. He doesn't believe in killing for the sake of killing. He's not a malicious man in terms of the time. And no, he's not. He's genuinely not.
I don't know. Coincidences. Oh, it was a mass genocide. Not my fault. There. I wish I had lots of regrets.
He never went out to commit genocide. It was never his intent.
That's what the Americans also said.
He hung soldiers who committed crimes in Ireland.
Hey, Andrew is hanging right now.
I'm just saying.
Just saying. God, I can't bitch know about this. You see, I agree with the comment section. What the comment section is turned around, it says Cromwell was just out for brutal revenge, and the people of Drogheda and the Royalists. Yeah, 100%. He woke up that morning and was like, "I'm going to commit
most
murder."
of the soldiers who were massacred in Drogheda were English.
Yes, true.
Yep.
The commander was an English royalist, sort of. See, one thing, like, I don't like Cromwell, but I understand where Micheál is coming from. But people forget the context.
Yeah.
War began in Ireland in 1641, and it goes to 1652 to 1653. When Cromwell comes in, it's the first invasion of Ireland where his soldiers are very well supplied. So, and like in Germany in the same period, I think in parts of Germany, 30% of the population die. Like if an army marches through your area, there's going to be increased disease. There's going to be increased crimes because soldiers commit crimes.
Mm,
And in those days, soldiers are brutalized, and they brutalize people.
mm,
War is bad for you, and it's whoever it spreads disease. Your much of your food will get robbed, and constant warfare has had a very bad effect on the economy and on the agriculture.
mm,
And then, yes, he does commit atrocities, and then he is his, but like the atrocities are exaggerated, especially in the 19th century. But um, I think he's singled out because he was very successful, in part because Ormond was such an idiot at that stage.
mm.
Um, Ormond loses
God.
everything, and they're like several like of the old English Confederate commanders. They managed to lose everything, but Ormond gave Dublin to the parliamentarians, and then besieges it a few months later, and then
Mm,
manages to lose the battle of Rathmines because he sends out orders for his soldiers to do something. Then he goes for a nap, and it's. But the parliamentarian soldiers were quite brutal,
mm,
especially Lord Inchquin of the burnings, I think it was, or was that in the following war.
mm,
Um, the fact you have these continual campaigns and people, even before Cromwell, the parliamentarian soldiers are killing people, they're
mm,
burning, and people are dying, and then the population structure, or not population structure, the landholding structure is dramatically changed afterwards.
mm,
So he was very successful, which is why I think, and he was easier to vilify than Elizabeth I. I think that people, nationalist historians and not so nationalist historians, writing in the 19th century, because most of them were royalists, like they didn't want
mm,
to annoy Queen Victoria, they found it easier to attack Cromwell, make him into a villain, than than Queen Elizabeth.
mm.
And the 1640s, 1650s represent the end of Gaelic Ireland. There's no
Yeah,
more Gaelic soldiers. You'll find some O'Neills in the Jacobites, but they're no longer Gaelic soldiers.
yeah,
Uh, you have so there are a lot of and a lot of Irish poetry, Gaelic poetry is quite clear about this. Sort
yeah.
of,
Yeah, I will
And
just say, someone says
one.
about the Dutch banks for flooding money into who paid for it. Actually, so the English government couldn't raise the funds, so they obviously sold. They promised land to any creditors that would credit for the. For Cromwell actually was one of those ones, so he had a vested interest in conquering Ireland. He had a financial gain from it. He had lands granted to him. He given to him from his in payment into the army in County Down, actually. So he had a vested interest in it himself to win the war. I would What I will say is that Jim was asking now, did he hung English or Irish soldiers? He hung English soldiers for theft. I
Mm,
believe the army was marching, and they went. Some troops kind of filtered off. A couple of them filtered off and robbed an Irish woman. I believe they actually said it was an Irish woman, and Cromwell had the troops hung.
mm,
Very similar to O'Neill as well. O'Neill did something similar uh, during the so-called massacres. There was a lot of
just to be
propaganda.
Yeah, just to be clear for everybody, because I know a lot of American viewers don't cover the war of the Three Kingdoms of Ireland and Britain. The war is fought between. Originally, it started off in England. It starts off fighting between the English Parliament and the English Royalists. Eventually, Cromwell wins that side of the war. Over in Scotland, it's more of a religious war up in Scotland, isn't it, between Presbyterians and they're revolting against the English and all that kind of stuff. That's what's happening up in Scotland, isn't it?
originally, no. Originally, the Calvinists, the church,
Mm,
um, are fighting against Charles I,
yeah.
and then but then they after the first English Civil War, they kind of get cold feet, and then they support Charles first again, which results in Charles the First getting executed,
mm,
and then they try to support Charles the Second, which results in Cromwell invading Scotland and winning a couple of battles and destroying the Scotch armies, the
mm.
Covenanter armies, essentially.
Yeah. And then on top of that as well, in Ireland at the same time, obviously we're not getting equality religious wise. So it was Rory O'Neill, wasn't it? Rory O'Neill rebels in
No, Rory
1641.
O'More. Rory O'More.
Yeah, Rory O'More. He rebels in 1641, and it just turns into an unorganized massacre. Really, really bad propaganda wise, because
Yeah, it
anybody who's
just
anti-Irish jumps on the bandwagon.
the massacre is not as bad as it's made out to be.
Mm,
Yes.
What happens is uh, the they're about to launch this big revolt,
mm,
including capturing Dublin Castle, but it found out it goes ahead. I think Lord Maguire was involved as well. They're
mm,
quite successful. There are at some Catholic prisoners that are massacred, and then basically locals take things into their own hands because you have an outcry, and this happened everywhere in Europe at that stage. You have an outcry against these people who represent to many people oppression. Um,
mm,
and one thing that many Gaelic Irish would strip the English naked. They did the same in
mm,
Munster in 1598. It to me that is they're kind of saying, look, all you English are calling us savages. So look, who's running around with no clothes? And then they would let them go, but many of the English would die because they're not used to, they have no clothes, so they're going to freeze. There were
mm,
massacres on both sides, but in England it gets thrown into it. Basically becomes St. Bartholomew's Night number 2, and it feeds into all these biblical tropes. And you have the English claiming that there's like 150,000 Protestants massacred when there may have been 50,000 Protestants in Ireland. Um,
mm,
Phelim O'Neill was he kind of becomes the leader of it, but then you have a lot of Irish soldiers returning who had been fighting for Spain. Owen Rua O'Neill returns. He becomes the
mm.
commander up in Ulster. Um,
Yeah.
Preston, who I saw was mentioned, comes. He doesn't like Owen O'Neill, and he's good for sieges because I think he captured Duncannon Fort in Waterford. But apart from that, he's crap, and a few other ones. Someone just asked about Portadown. Yes, there was a big massacre. I think that was the main massacre in Ulster. But again,
Mm,
I think the numbers are a couple of hundred.
Yeah,
But
so I will just like chime in here about the massacres. The massacres, like you say, are very tit for tat. Not only that, but at the time, the massacres aren't happening as part of the wider Confederacy's policy. A lot of these are rogue elements, local feuds, local angry, displaced clan king groups, whatever, individuals, families, retaliating. They're not part of the wider, let's just say, the other side of the argument. They're not part of the other side of the army. And in fact, they're very quickly, the Confederacy and all realized that these rogue elements, I believe it's Maguire's, I think it might be Maguire's who are the ones doing it. Very quickly, they go, we need to nip this in the bud. Because you got to remember when the first sort of Ayers Rebellion happened, the first year is chaotic. No, there's no real organization because you have a lot of groups coming up from it. But not only that, the Protestants that flee to England, back to London, a lot of them are obviously they're wealthy anyway. They're over here and they have connections. They flood the pamphlets, London full of pamphlets, really like over egging the the massacre against Protestants, not mentioning any other things that are happening.
Protestant massacre porn.
Yeah, and
Mm.
not only that, then
Can we get away with that one?
the government then get hold of this, and obviously a lot of people who are doing the pamphlets are connected to the government, and they use this again. They need to use it. They end up using this as their war cry, so they really pump it out and really egg it on, because this is actually what they first tried to pin the whole invasion on. Not some justification to reclaim what was theirs. It's literally like retribution and revenge for massacring our innocent, Protestant kinsmen. And so yeah, it's a real it's really overhyped. I would anything you would sort of read on that. Any pamphlets we have that survive, you really do see how is it Dr. Morrill is an expert on Oliver Cromwell. I believe it's Dr. Sam Morrill, Morrill. He is someone that you should read up his work on it, and you will see how just how overhyped this massacre in Portadown and others are, overhyped, and how the Irish ones, the ones that are happening against the Irish, are, just sort of, poo-pooed.
And then after that, you have another 7, 8 years of war. The Irish have some success. The best success is the Battle of Benburb, which is very interesting because essentially it's a Gaelic Ulster army fighting in the Spanish fashion, fighting against a Scottish army who are led by veterans of the Swedish army, so Gustavus Adolphus, and the Spanish tactics win. But the Rome sends a papal nuncio who does more harm than good. There's all sorts of dancing of armistices and alliances, and essentially the main leader of the rebels is Ormond. The royalist is Ormond, and although he's good at alliances, as a military commander, he's absolutely crap. And then people are switching sides all along. The parliamentarians are given Dublin by Ormond. Then Ormond is campaigning against them. He captures, at this stage, he captures Drogheda, I think Trim Castle, several other places. Then he loses Rathmines. Then... So because of the loss of Dublin, Cromwell can land there. And then things just go crazy. Owen Roe O'Neill dies before he can fight him. His nephew, I think Hugh, does quite well against Cromwell in Clonmel and Limerick. No, Limerick is against Ayrton, the son-in-law. But then there's the crazy thing. There's Owen O'Neill's army is largely intact. And they meet, and among the soldiers are Owen O'Neill's son, who is a Spanish veteran, and some other guys. And they choose this guy, Eber MacMahon, who's a bishop and has never fought. And so there's a place, Scarfollis, or I don't know how to pronounce it. It's in Donegal. It's a very important battle, but completely forgotten. So basically, the Ulster army is in a good position, and MacMahon insists that they go somewhere else, and they get completely massacred. Owen O'Neill's son is captured and then killed, and the Ulster army is wiped out. And then you just have a guerrilla warfare for the next year and a bit.
So here, but I will just add to then again. So after the warfare, I have a historical map hanging on the wall here at my house that shows the massacres and seizures in Ireland from north to south, east, west. Now, massacre is a word that gets thrown around quite a lot, a bit like genocide and stuff like that. It gets thrown around, probably not where it needs to be applied. And don't get me wrong, it's not to underestimate civilian death and whatnot, but massacre really has it's really vocal, but it's it doesn't really give a clear detail of what's happening in the area. But I will just say, you were saying about confiscations and seizures, sorry. Actually, the famous attribution of to Hell O'Connick is attributed to Cromwell because it happened under his tenure. Actually, he was against it. He never agreed to he didn't want to displace the Irish populace to end up putting them to Connacht and confiscating all the land. Obviously, he wanted to confiscate as much land as he could, but he was really against the to Hell O'Connick. Again, it's not him. People don't attribute enough blame not only to his son-in-law for later acts, but the government at the time as well. He was some of his policies and his defenses could be seen as protecting Ireland from the worst of what was trying to come out of the government, at the time.
No,
I'm
I
telling
have
you,
to disagree with that one there.
He was a stalwart defender of stopping the worst. Not saying what happened. The worst. He was against Hell O'Connick. He was against that policy.
He was the gateway to a lot of this stuff. Even if his name, right? Even if his name isn't on it, he was the gateway to a lot of stuff. Sorry,
I'm trying to hold up a book. It's called Age of Atrocity. I bought this book in hardback about 15 years ago, and when I moved back to Ireland, it went missing. It's finally been republished as paperback, 25 euros. It's Age of Atrocity edited by David Edwards, Padraig Lenihan, and Clodagh Tate. John Morrell publishes in it. It's a very, very good book for that period. It specifically is looking at who killed who and stories like that. I would recommend it. Just because it's time to wrap up, I just see Frank Barron has asked a question. I heard the Gaelic lords adopted a Gregorian calendar early, which caused some confusion. Is there any truth in that? Yes, there is. They did, because it was a Catholic thing. They adopted it more. So there's a 10-day difference. Many people say the Battle of Kinsale was fought on Christmas Eve, 1601. It wasn't. It was fought in 1602. Except there's another confusion. At that time, for the English, the year didn't begin on the 1st of January. It began in March on Ladies' Day. It's quite confusing. Like you're reading historical letter, and it's talking about Kinsale and says January 1600, and you say, hold on a second. Oh my God, he means 1601. It is quite confusing. The English only would go with it 1700 and something.
Happy days. Will it finish up there? And we'll continue our argument next week there, Michal.
I will just say just really quickly, if you want to just see where my head's at, research Henry Ireton. He is Oliver Cromwell's son-in-law. And then you'll see where my headspace is at when I'm not defending Oliver Cromwell. I'm just demoting him to second worst.
I hear there's a poster of Cromwell in your wall. I know that for a fact. Come on now, me.
It's on my ceiling.
It's the same thing with, what was it called? The Great Hunger Never Happened. I know that. You have them side by side. Great Hunger Never Happened, and a poster of Cromwell. That's a fact. Right. Regardless, we'll finish up there. Thanks very much, lads, for jumping on. Your knowledge is always great, especially Michal's. And on top of that as well, if you guys are looking to support Michal's True Son of Ulster work, how do we support your colonization? I mean, your work up in the north.
Okay. Well, you can just come across and like the videos. I normally focus primarily on surnames every now and again I encroach into history. I may need to do
Mm.
the long video that I've been waiting to do for Cromwell for a long time, just to defend my stance. Yeah, just come, like, watch the videos. Think about becoming a member, but I haven't done my members live in a wee while. But I had hoped to do it this week, but obviously I'm still recovering from man flu. Any man that is watching right now will tell you it's worse than the bubonic plague. So those of you that don't understand, don't comment. But yeah, so just come like, comment on videos, ask your questions. That's all I need. Thanks very much.
Happy days. And Owen, how do I support your
Yeah,
work on decolonization of Ireland?
the well, come across, watch my videos, like them, leave comments, subscribe. I have a buy me a coffee account if you want to throw anything my way. I have a video out. I released it a few days ago on the conversion of Ireland to Christianity and its reinterpretation in the 19th century. It's doing well. Some controversy, but it's doing well. So, just
And it's a video,
yeah,
is
yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right now, lads, if you're into that, you have to click onto the page itself. YouTube has gone off this week. What was it? I think it was 2 weeks ago. I messed up the whole thing. So now it's only shorts that are popping up. So if you want to support Owen, you have to click on the page. And I think at this stage now, you have to get a piece of paper or, put a notification into your own phone, alarm onto the phone every week to go and check up on, what was it called, Owen's page, because I don't know what YouTube is on at this stage. No one knows what YouTube is on at this stage. It's trying to be TikTok. It's failing to be TikTok. It doesn't know what it's doing at this point. So if you want to watch Owens at this stage now, lads, you actually have to click onto his page to watch the video. Don't expect it to pop up. Another way as well is that you have to click onto your subscriptions. Don't go onto the homepage anymore. Homepage is messed up by YouTube. You actually have to click onto your own subscriptions and then scroll down to see everything you've subscribed to in the past. Okay, guys, YouTube, I don't know what the heads are on at this stage. They're all over the place. But regardless, is there any other way we can support your work on, or do you just want us to watch your
Watch the
videos? Is it?
videos. If you can make a donation, fine. Leave comments. That always helps. Subscribe.
Mm,
Or
happy
pass them
days.
around the place. Like, share them.
Yes.
Mhm.
Share, like,
Happy
subscribe.
days. And do you have the old coffee
Yeah,
as
buy me a
well?
coffee
Buy me
account
a
for
coffee.
subscription. I think it's buy me a
Happy days.
coffee Forest Fasa.
But that's on your, if
Yeah,
you
any
click
of my
onto
video
your
in the notes,
YouTube
it will
channel, it
say
should
it
be there
there.
as well. Happy days, happy days. Also, on top of that, guys, as well, same time tomorrow. I think it's 4 o'clock New York time and 9 o'clock Irish time. If you head onto my Patreon, you can sign up now, or you can donate whatever if you just want to support the channel full stop. But if you pay about 20 quid a month over to the Patreon, you can then pop over to the presentations. Every Sunday night, I do a presentation, New York time, 4 o'clock, and Irish time, 9 p.m., but it also gets recorded as well. And I make sure to answer any questions you have on the presentation if you leave any. But that is, what was it called? Oh, sorry about that. Who said a donation there? Oh, thanks very much for there. That means a whole load for me. Thanks for that donation. That absolutely means the world to myself. But also on top of that as well, if you head over to my Patreon, I have a presentation for tomorrow night. It's going to be on Brian O'Neill's Revolt and the Tamad Wars. I'm starting that presentation tomorrow, lads. So if you want to pop on there, and if you're late as well, I've got all the recording as well, all the recordings on Patreon as well. So head on over to Patreon, check that out for sure. And I've got the previous presentations as well. And those presentations are going to go on for the next 3 months. And also, I'm going to have presentations obviously after that as well, because those presentations are doing very well over there as well. Okay, so that's starting off Brian O'Neill's Revolt and the Tamad Wars, the Irish forces versus the English forces. That's starting up tomorrow, so definitely head on over to my Patreon to watch that. And when I'm finished all those presentations, then I'm starting up with the Scottish War of Independence. So you can see straight away that it's a good time to jump on over there. you guys don't have anything else you want to add into the chat before we finish up?
Just thanks for all the gifts on TikTok. Really appreciate it. I got a warning for Cromwell supporting. Yes, I know, Kia. Just thanks for all the gifts and all the likes on TikTok. Really appreciate that. Sorry we didn't get to go across to you as much as we'd wanted to. Was quite busy on both chats. I will just say, if you are a TikTok watcher, come across to our YouTube, and also just for anyone of you, check out all those names underneath. Our personal names are the names of the channels, so make sure to head across those channels. Each one has a TikTok and a YouTube as well, so check them out.
Happy days. All right, I'll see you